There is a secret animatronic in the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. And no, I'm not talking about the endoskeleton, Sparky the dog, or even Ella. Animatronics that I'm sure most people have already found out exist in the movie. No, I'm talking about an animatronic that you guys probably completely missed, and that is Shadow Freddy. Shadow Freddy's first appearance isn't even in the movie. It's in marketing material for the film, in which you can see the office and all of the monitors. Various scenes from the movie will play out on these monitors, but one thing specifically that happens with this monitor setup in the office is there will be brief glimpses of Shadow Freddy appearing on one of the cameras. In quite an eerie display, Shadow Freddy appears to be acutely aware of him being watched as he looks directly into one of the cameras with his glazed over white eyes unblinking and his mouth partly agape. Static and distortion are heavily present on this particular screen. During the events of the film, Aunt Jan hires 3 delinquents to try to get Mike Schmidt fired from his nighttime job at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Their job is rather simple. They go to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza during the day, ransack it, steal a bunch of stuff, and then when Mike shows up the next night, he gets fired because of the state of the pizzeria. And this leads to Mike, Jeff, Hank, and Carl making their way to Freddy Fazbear's. After they get to the pizzeria, Max decides to stay in the car and wait for the 3 guys to go and commit this Faz burglary at Freddy's Pizzeria, and things quickly go awry when the animatronics see that there are people in the pizzeria. They go into kill mode and start dispatching people left and right until Max is the only one left. She notices that they haven't come back in quite some time, and she goes inside the pizzeria looking for her colleagues, but to no avail. She is then lured by the spirit child that possesses Freddy into parts and service, where she is quickly killed by Freddy.
Was that the bite of 87?
Now, later on in the film, things get really morbid when we find out what exactly happened to this motley group of Faz burglars. And we see that when Carl got attacked by Mr. Cupcake basically chewed up his face to the point where it's unrecognizable. We also see Hank, who's in terrible shape as well, with his body being contorted and him being slightly mutilated. We also see Max. Max is stuffed inside the torso of Shadow Freddy, and Jeff is nowhere to be seen, but I can imagine that Jeff has probably been shoved inside of the Sparky the dog animatronic, which is also in the scene. Given the nature of her injuries and death, it is probably safe to assume that after being split in half by being bit by a large animatronic bear, that her body isn't all present inside of Shadow Freddy, with her legs being who knows where. Also, given how Remnant and Agony work, it's probably safe to assume that Max will eventually come to possess Shadow Freddy as a vessel for her spirit, where she will be reborn as Shadow Freddy. The Purple Bear would first make its debut in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 as a hallucination. He would sometimes appear leaning up against the wall in parts and service. He also appeared to, much like the movie version, be looking directly into the camera. He would later appear in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 during one of the many arcade cabinet-inspired 8-bit minigames where you could take control of one of the 4 members of the Fazbear Band, in which Shadow Freddy would urge you to follow him before he would have you cornered in a room and then attacked by William Afton, causing you to get dismantled by him. In Five Nights at Freddy's 4, we have Nightmare, who I personally believe to be a version of Shadow Freddy. And the belief that I have that Nightmare is a version of Shadow Freddy comes from the constant recolor of Golden Freddy into Shadow Freddy. And in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, Fredbear is supposed to be a version of Golden Freddy, and he's turned black to create Nightmare, which leads me again to believe that Nightmare is Shadow Freddy. With all this in mind, it gets me really excited to find out what they would do with Shadow Freddy in a sequel to the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. There's so many cool and mysterious plot points that they could do with a character like this. Not to mention, now that Shadow Freddy is basically Max, it would be interesting to see the dynamic between Mike Schmidt, Abby Schmidt, and of course, Max. Would Max remember Mike and Abby, or would Max be the same as the Ghost Children, being confused and manipulated by the movie's antagonist? Given that Max appears to be very closely connected to the Schmidt family, being a sort of spy for Aunt Jen, and being the babysitter and friend to Mike, she is hired by Mike to babysit Abby while he goes to work at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. She seems like an altogether pretty nice and pleasant person, despite how she attempted to throw Mike under the bus, merely for the benefit of Aunt Jan. And if Mike and Abby are still the main characters in the sequel to the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, it would be interesting to see how they would react to Max basically being Shadow Freddy. But with the movie having done really well at the box office, making twice its money back, it makes me wonder what they could possibly do with Shadow Freddy and Max in a potential sequel or sequels to the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below, and with that, do take care, have a great night, and I'll see you in the next video.